Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us at the market site in Times Square, New York City, we have Emil Fuglsang. He's the co-founder of Matter. We're going to take a look at measuring sustainability contributions with innovative and transparent data access. Emil, welcome to the market site. It's great to have you with us. The purpose of sustainability, why do we need that kind of investing?
So there are a few reasons why sustainability is important in investing. First of all, there's a big financing gap in the world right now. So if we need to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, we're looking at an annual financing gap of $2.5 trillion. Now, the public sector can lift some of that. The private sector also needs to come into this space. And on top of that, you also see what you would call a norms gap. So a gap between the norms of the individual investors out there and what their money is actually being invested in. So while we lack money, we also see that people's money is actually not being put to the use that it would be if you ask them where would you want your retirement savings, for example, to be working. So the consequence of that is misaligned signals between public policy and what the market is trying to do.
All right, now increasing accessibility. Why are more people not investing sustainably?
So that's a good question. So we know the interest is there. We know particularly with millennials, more than 80% of millennials are either very interested or interested in sustainable investing. We also know that this interest is increasing. But when you look at what's out there in the market, you look at the products on the shelves that you can buy as a retail investor. When you look at what the institutional investors are doing, it's still sort of slow to take off this field of sustainable investing. One of the reasons we think is that there is simply a lack of tools to get a proper overview of what's in your portfolio. So many people, if you go out there in the street right now at Times Square and ask, what is your retirement savings? What is your 401k invested in? People won't know. And so we have this problem of transparency and actually giving people a proper view of where their money is and what it is doing right now. So that's one of the reasons. Another one is that it's still cumbersome for the institutional side, brokers, banks, for institutional investors to create sustainable products and conduct sustainable investing strategies, in part because data is, there are some issues with ESG data today. There's some issues with how we can integrate it into investment decisions. So right now we have a lot of knowledge and a lot of good ambitions, but it still isn't operationalized to the extent where it gets out there and really works for investment strategies.
All right, now this is where fintech comes into play. I want to pull up our first chart here so we can take a look at how you're using machine learning, AI, these new forms of technology to really harness as much information as you can to make these decisions.
Yeah, so we're a fintech company with the vision or the mission to have capital work for planet and people. And we asked ourselves, how can we actually harness AI, machine learning, et cetera, to solve some of these issues? So what we're doing is, for example, we're using machine learning to better organize data and improve the quality of sustainability data. And we use AI for tasks like reading language, reading text online, and understanding sentiment in terms of whether it's a positive or negative sentiment around several of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So using AI and machine learning like that allows us to tap into new sources for knowledge around what the sustainability performance of different issuers of financial assets. So by reading text or tapping into what different NGOs around the world, academics, other actors in the civil society space are saying about different companies, we actually have the ability to create a more holistic, outside-in approach to what sustainable performance is. In short, you could say that is the equivalent of basically flipping the perspective. So instead of asking a company, how are you performing, you ask the more critical voices, the sector experts in the room. You know, you're an expert on deforestation. Who are the pioneers and who are the laggards in terms of working ambitiously with the strategy?
So what does the chart show us here?
So this is an example of what we, through, for example, a partner like Nasdaq, are able to show end users or things that we can help banks or brokers show to their clients. So this chart, for example, shows, you know, here's an overview of the carbon emissions on an entire portfolio measured against a relevant index of your own choice. It could be a Nasdaq Global Index. You can look at waste generation, renewable power production, etc. So these are some of the more classic ESG themes. We can also look more into gender equality, look at if there are any controversial companies in your portfolio based on the norms that you have as an investor. So for example, here we've got an example of an investor that cares about defense and weapons, fossil fuels and tobacco, and would like to avoid these themes. So we're able to flag the companies that are currently involved in these areas, and then we're able to also highlight both sustainable alternatives, but also some of the pioneers within some of the areas that you actually want to promote, which is very important, right? It's not just about avoiding the bad stuff, but also investing more in what we want to promote.
It's interesting to see how ESG evolved, because it used to be about which companies were doing wrong. Now it's about which companies are proactively doing it right. And
Yeah.
I feel like that the beneficial topics really shows that down there. What kind of investors use your platform?
So right now we are servicing pension funds that use our platform to create sustainable investment strategies and understand existing portfolios. We are also servicing family offices, so smaller but still sort of institutional investors, to help them align their investment strategy with their personal norms. The pension funds in turn service clients, and they use one of our dashboards as well to help exemplify what is the amount of CO2 that you're avoiding, for example, by investing fossil-free, or how many megawatt hours of renewable energy are you producing or contributing to the production of by investing in this and that way compared to a benchmark index of your choice.
All right, to wrap up here, why partner with Nasdaq to make this happen?
So Nasdaq is, the biggest online or the biggest stock exchange in the world, with most trades and most companies listed. It's also been a pioneer in the space of digital trading for decades, and one of the founding members of the Sustainable Stock Exchange Initiative. So we specialize in data science, in sustainability analyses and user experiences, but by powering up and partnering with someone like Nasdaq, we really increase the width of the analyses that Matter is able to do, and have the potential of reaching far beyond what a normal fintech company in its early days is able to reach. So we hope to increase the reach and also hopefully empower the clients of Nasdaq to actually get ESG data out there and make it more relevant to end users.
All right, Emil, thank you so much for joining us at MarketSite.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining me on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.